the news today, of course, the whole situation in Ukraine, the annexation of Ukrainian territory to Russia, and then Putin's speech about the whole situation, filled with a lot of anger at the United States, as well another very thinly veiled threat about nuclear weapons. This time, in the form of a truth claim that because the United States used nuclear weapons during World War II, that has set a precedent. The implication being that if any force tries to take this new territory from Russia, nuclear weapons will be utilized in order to protect that territory. Now, what all this suggests as well is that there has been sort of a shift in the sense that at the beginning of the war, Russia was saying, and many people were agreeing, that the real issue was whether Ukraine was part of NATO. Ukraine now wants to be part of NATO. The United States is currently saying no, but it does seem that eventually Ukraine will join NATO, and it also is logical to assume that the Russian leadership realized that this was something that was going to happen if they seized these territories. Therefore, it is the territories, not the membership of Ukraine in NATO, that was the more important issue for them. The territories, the new territories in Luhansk and Donetsk, are very important symbolically for Putin. Russian speakers live there. He sees them as being persecuted. He honestly believes those territories belong to Russia, and he is willing to pay a very steep price in order to incorporate those territories. What all this does is say something about the psychology of Putin, and I think that is something that needs further analysis and further discussion. It's now several hours later, and the Twitterverse has had an opportunity to respond in more detail to Putin's speech. Some of the remarks have been quite clever, but the reality on the ground is that the forces are in a fairly static state. Some people are quite enthusiastic over more recent successes of the Ukrainian army in Lyman. Nevertheless, the Russians are signing up many more men. They are going to be able to reinforce their positions. They have absolutely epic amounts of equipment that they can supply their forces with. After all, they've been preparing for decades for World War III, a conventional World War III, and a lot of the commentary that has been coming through Western news sources has been along the lines that the mobilization in Russia is chaotic, it's confused, the Russians are desperate, and so forth. There hasn't been much substantial information to indicate that this is really the case. In closing, one thing that I'd like to remind people of is that a year ago, at the beginning of October 2021, this war was on nobody's radar. In fact, I don't even think it was on the radar of intelligence agencies. That is how much the situation has changed in a little under 3/4 of a year. Putin is still there. It doesn't look he's going to be removed from power one way or the other. He is the leader that other nations are going to have to deal with and negotiate with on some level or another. Several people have been pointing out, quite wittily, that Putin seems to have some kind of weird obsession with trans rights, with LGBT, and so forth. Now, there have been rumors circulating for many, many years about the sexuality of Vladimir Putin himself. But apart from that, apart from the possibility that he may be something of a sort of closeted or somewhat psychosexually twisted individual, there is the whole issue of his, on the one hand, his desire to conceive of himself as an anti-imperialist and an anti-hegemon, and at the same time, in other words, a progressive, and at the same time adopt the sorts of very, very right-wing positions that win favor, for example, among right-wing parties in Europe and North America. I think that ultimately, if we are to understand Putin and not just deride him and not just laugh at him, but try to sort of understand him as a politician and as an actor on the world stage, we'll probably have to bracket those issues, his sexual psychology, and instead focus on his political interests, his political obsessions in some respects. And a lot of these have to do with ethnic nationalism and his sense of Russianness and his sense of protecting those he sees as Russian people. That is, I think, the core sort of political idea that comes through in this speech.